Hong Kong is often seen as a triumph of modern building science. Dense, vertical, and engineered to endure almost anything. Yet beneath that shell of steel and glass lies an infrastructure from a different era. Bamboo scaffolding, plastic mesh, foam panels, and temporary coverings that cling to residential towers like a second skin. For decades, experts warned that this blend of traditional methods and extreme urban density created a silent structural risk, one that most residents passed daily without a second thought. All it needed was the wrong spark at the wrong time. On November 26, 2025, that spark found its fuel. An ordinary renovation project at Wong Fuk Court in Tai Po erupted into Hong Kong's deadliest fire in more than 70 years. A blaze so violent it triggered the city's first Level 5 alarm since 2008. By the end, 128 people were dead, including a firefighter preparing for his wedding. Another 79 were injured. More than 200 residents were at one point unaccounted for. This wasn't an accident. It was the culmination of structural vulnerabilities and decisions made long before the first flame appeared. To understand why this happened, we need to go back to the roots of Hong Kong's public housing. Public housing in Hong Kong was born from tragedy. In 1953, the Shek Kip Mei squatter settlement burned to the ground, leaving 53,000 people homeless. That fire reshaped the city's urban policy forever, giving rise to the first fireproof resettlement blocks. Decades later, Wong Fuk Court, constructed between 1982 and 1988, represented the next generation. 8 towers, nearly 1,900 units, around 4,600 residents, compact spaces built for efficiency, not luxury. By 2021, nearly 40% of the estate's population was elderly. These weren't transient residents. These were people who had lived here for decades, people who expected safety. But the buildings were aging, tiles were falling from facades. A common structural failure in Hong Kong's humid climate. So in July 2024, the Housing Authority approved a 330 million Hong Kong dollar repair contract. And that is when the next danger was installed. The buildings were wrapped from top to bottom in bamboo scaffolding, a cultural icon of Hong Kong construction, but biologically dried grass, highly flammable. Around it, green nylon mesh, petroleum-based plastic. Windows were sealed with styrofoam boards to keep out dust. Another fuel source. By late 2025, Wong Fuk Court was effectively 8 vertical chimneys connected by bamboo walkways. All it needed was ignition. On a dry Tuesday afternoon, with humidity below 50% and monsoon winds blowing steadily, ignition began. A spark, either from welding or a discarded cigarette, landed on flammable mesh on Block F. It should have been fire retardant. It wasn't. Within seconds, flame raced up the facade. The narrow gap between concrete and netting created a flue, a vertical wind tunnel. Superheated gases shot upward. Fresh oxygen rushed in below. Residents on the 10th floor smelled burning plastic. By the time they looked out the window, the fire had passed their floor. The mesh didn't simply burn, it melted. Dripping flames ignited bamboo below. The building burned upward and downward simultaneously. Wind accelerated it. Radiant heat exceeding 50 kilowatts per square meter ignited Block G across a 15-meter gap. Then Block H. By evening, 7 of the 8 towers were burning. Inside, corridors filled with toxic black smoke. Stairwells became chimneys. Styrofoam boards funneled superheated gases into living rooms. Windows shattered from the heat. Firefighters entered what was effectively a blast furnace. Temperatures exceeded 1,000 degrees Celsius. Stairwells were pitch black. Elevators had become vertical smoke tunnels. Still, they climbed. They broke down doors. They pulled residents out of bathrooms where people hid behind wet towels, a tactic that saved many. But for hundreds of elderly residents, escape was physically impossible. The fire burned for 43 hours. Once the fire subsided, the site shifted from emergency zone to criminal investigation. Police arrested 3 senior staff members of the renovation company for suspected manslaughter. Then ICAC arrested 11 more individuals, including directors of Willpower Architects, the consultancy that oversaw the project. Investigators uncovered procurement irregularities, safety failures, and possible falsification of documentation. And this is where the tragedy became national. Within hours, Beijing declared 3 days of national mourning. Flags across Hong Kong and at PLA bases were lowered to half-mast. John Lee and senior officials led a 3-minute silence at dawn. Condolence books opened in all 18 districts. At Fu Hung Community Center, mourners lined up for blocks. People brought flowers, candles, origami cranes, snack bags, handwritten notes. Some were residents from Tai Po. Some were firefighters in uniform. Some were strangers who simply couldn't bear what happened. The numbers remained devastating: 128 dead, 79 injured, around 150 still unaccounted for. Only 39 victims initially identified, the rest requiring DNA. Meanwhile, donations poured in. Alibaba, Tencent, Xiaomi, BYD, Meituan, and Binance contributed tens of millions for relief. Volunteers mobilized across the city. People delivered food, water, blankets, medicine, clothing. This became one of the largest civilian mobilizations Hong Kong has seen in decades. But the deeper question remained: how many other buildings across Hong Kong are wrapped in the same flammable armor right now? The physics behind the blaze were brutal, but not unique. Bamboo plus plastic mesh equals a chimney. Styrofoam insulation equals accelerant. Wind corridors between towers equals flame pathways. Old buildings without sprinklers equals interior flashover in under 3 minutes. Wong Fuk Court was not a freak accident. It was a structural inevitability created by aging public housing, combustible renovation materials, subcontracting layers with no oversight, ignored complaints, and a regulatory framework designed for a different era. The government announced a 300 million Hong Kong dollar emergency fund. Thousands of residents were relocated to hotels, hostels, and transitional flats. Regulatory reforms accelerated, phasing out bamboo scaffolding, mandatory certification of all renovation materials, citywide inspections of estates under repair, and multiple criminal investigations into the renovation industry. But despite all of this, fear lingers, because countless towers across Hong Kong today are wrapped in the same green mesh, the same bamboo, the same risk. We owe a debt to the 128 lives lost, to Senior Station Officer Ho Wai Ho, to the families who lost everything in minutes. But memory alone is useless without awareness. So I want to hear from you. Is your building under renovation? Have you seen workers smoking on scaffolding? Do you know your escape route? Do your alarms actually work? These questions sound small, but on November 26th, they were the difference between life and death. Stay aware, stay safe, and thank you for watching.